up, everybody? Welcome to the Perfectly Blended Podcast, Season 4, Episode 9. Today, we're actually going to be doing a recap about the summit on Stepfamily Ministries that we just went to, and that's coming up
right now.
Are you a Christian and you are looking to take your faith, your family, and your future to the next level?
Then this is the channel for you.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's show. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, here with the always gorgeous, super smiley. I like your shirt, wife.
Thanks.
Miss Christy, how are you, babe?
I'm good.
You good?
My hair air dried, so that's why it looks this way. So just to let you know, if you're watching us and not listening to us, when my hair air dries, I haven't even put a brush through it. And yes, I did go to work like this. So that's how my day has been.
Always on the go, always running, no matter what.
Yeah.
I got up this morning and I went to go get in the shower and the towel was wet. And I'm like, yep, my wife took a shower this morning, which she normally doesn't. She normally takes showers at night.
I'm a nighttime showerer. And this is the reason why. Okay.
Here we go.
Exactly. Anybody that showers in the morning is wrong. Because
that makes me wrong.
It is. It does.
No.
So the reason why you should shower at night is because at night you've been outside all day in the elements and gotten all that, the fungus and the germs and everything else on you. And then you come home and you're supposed to put on clean jammies and get into your bed clean. So you take a shower, you get all clean, and then you get into your bed. So your bed stays clean, your mattress stays clean, everything stays clean. You don't get into your bed dirty after you went out and been out all day long in the world and then bring the funk and put the funk in your bed. That's gross.
Funk in your bed.
That's gross.
I would say that a lot of people probably say take one in the morning and in the evening.
I know. I think a lot of people just take it in the morning because they don't think the way that I think.
Well, depending
I took one this morning anyway, which is very rare for me.
If you work out in the evening, I could see taking one in the evening as well, but I have to take one in the morning because I do not feel right. My day doesn't get started right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, I think it's psychological to do it at night too.
No, I just proved why that is.
It's in your mind. Okay. That is all the way in your mind. Oh, guess what? Our youngest boy, Christy's boy, 17 years old, our youngest total, he got his braces off today. Yep.
I know.
Yeah.
And they look so good. Like I just went and picked him up from marching band practice and he got in the car and I am like, let me see them, and he's showing them to me. I'm like, they look so good. Great. Yeah. And he was like, they look really good, and I'm like, it's just so, I don't know. It just, his teeth are so straight and they're so just white and just good looking.
Yeah. So out of our 4 kids, 3 of those children all had braces. Christy didn't have braces growing up. Mm-hmm. I did not have braces, and my son Josh are the only ones that didn't end up having braces, which it sounds like the majority of people end up having braces.
That's weird because my kid's dad never had braces.
Yeah.
And your ex never had braces. And it's weird because all the other kids had to have braces. Now, the interesting thing about it, though, is I never had to have braces and my ex never had to have braces, but both of my kids had to have braces. And then Jordan had to have braces, but she isn't biologically like your blood.
True.
So the only child out of all 4 children was your blood child that
didn't have braces.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Isn't that weird?
No, it's super weird now that you say it like that.
It's
blood child.
It's just your perfect genes.
I don't think so. You have perfect genes. You have perfect teeth. Your teeth are almost as good as mine. It's close.
I'll punch him later.
Every time we go to the dentist, we always get into this thing, right? We usually all go together. Our family goes together. And we usually ask the dentist for like, okay, who has nicer teeth?
Mm-mm.
What do you mean, What do you mean,
No.
What do you mean, no?
They randomly tell me. They're cleaning my teeth, and they're like, your teeth are so nice.
They tell me every time.
I'm like, listen, you need to go look at my husband's teeth, and then you need to tell him that mine are nicer than his.
And they don't, though.
And then the dentist comes in, and the dentist will be like, your husband has such nice teeth. And I'm like, mine are better. Look. Look.
And now and he always wink, nods. He's like, yeah. So, nonetheless, that's our tooth fairy story for the day.
But his teeth look so good.
They do. They look
really good. I wish I had
good.
sent him the picture so he could post it up so you could see it.
Yeah, you can see the pearly, shiny, straight teeth.
He's like,
yeah. It's so funny because we were in the car today and he's like, He's doing like that. Yeah, because he's like, they're slippery and slimy.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I'm sure if you have something on your teeth for 2 years, which I wouldn't know, I'm sure that, after they're off, you're like, whoa, this is super strange. Because you have something foreign attached to your teeth for 2 years.
I know. I asked him how plain his tuba was, and he's like,
hard.
I actually need to try.
Figure it out. Yeah. It's a learning curve. That's what he was telling me.
Yeah.
So this last, what did they say? The dentist is even competitive. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes, we're competitive everywhere. Stacy Lindstrom, okay? Duh. You've played cards with us, okay? My wife only cares about beating me. Only just me, okay? Yeah, she smiles. She's like, yeah, maybe. So, this last weekend we had an opportunity.
By the way, is Amazon $20.
Amazon, $20.
I can have him post the link later.
All right.
Because I've gotten a lot of compliments on it today.
/ LuLaRoe. That's what we're doing now.
No.
On our podcast.
Amazon.
Okay, so anyway, this last weekend we had an opportunity to go to the Stepfamily Summit, and it was really awesome, actually. It was in Atlanta, which I didn't really care for Atlanta itself, but the traffic is nuts.
I had to fly.
It's just like it was crazy, right? Yeah, and Christy's really afraid of flying. So there was all of those things around all of that, but our hotel room was good. The bed sucked, all those little weird things that make your trip.
The hotel was really nice, though.
But it was a really good trip because we learned and were able to make a lot of really good connections with some really awesome people, and it was super, super great. So today we really want to take and do kind of a mini recap about the big things that we took away very little. I mean, there's so much. Like,
so it was 2 full days.
Yeah, it was 2 full days, like 8:30 a.m. to like 5 p.m. Yeah, 2 days in a row. So there was a whole lot going on, but really what we did is we tried to kind of boil down to some of the 3 or 4 big things that we really took away. Yeah, that we thought were super, super important, and that we needed to maybe have a little bit of discussion today about it with you guys so we can kind of share. And, so we each have papers in front of us, and we normally don't. And there was one couple that were there that were Christy and I's favorite that were speakers.
The oldest, I think.
And they were probably the oldest, right? And they both had PhDs.
Yeah.
And were counselors, and he is a retired pastor. And the last 20, 30 years of their career, they only counseled step families, which I thought was super interesting. So you want to talk about wisdom? Like, these people had some serious amount of wisdom.
And they're a step family.
And they're a step family, which was super awesome.
And he's a devout pastor.
Yeah.
And what I loved about him is he was like, I know a lot of my pastor friends will only marriage counsel, pre-marriage counsel before people get married, first-time marriages, people in their 20s, early 20s or early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. And he's like, to me, that's easy. I want you to give me the hard. And number one, why he feels that way, God puts things on our hearts, but also because he then, has been part of a blended family now himself. And so he understands the different dynamics that step families have, especially in the Christian community, and how we can kind of feel like stepchildren to the church, So
yeah, that's well put, actually, babe. That's true. So I want you to let you know, I'm gonna completely slaughter these people's last names because it's a really tough one, right? People would probably slaughter ours.
Let me do it.
It's Jeff and Judy
Parazali. I think it was
Parzial is what I would say. Parzial. Okay, but I'm going to tell you their website, okay? And then if you guys want to check them out, they have their own website. It's called instepministries.com. Instepministries.com. That's much easier to spell. And they live in Colorado, a beautiful state of Colorado.
And we've been there.
We have been there. Nonetheless, okay, there is literally bullet point after bullet point after bullet point on these sheets of just pure, awesome, great information. So, like I said, we wanted to take a few things today and kind of boil those down and talk a little bit about them, because we seriously could talk about all of this stuff for the next 2 or 3 years, because it's just incredible.
Yeah, and they really touched on, it's the same thing I felt when I read Ron Deal's book, The Smart Step Family. I'm reading through it and I'm like, yes. Because he's talking about, how families need to crock pot and you have to let it last longer, and it takes the first longer. 2 years are the hardest, and most step families take 4 to 7 years to really subside, simmer down,
blend.
And yeah, so, and they do cover that, but I feel like this covered every single point that you could possibly think of. There's so many pages of points here, and these 3 points that we're going to talk about, or 4 points that we're going to talk about, were our biggest. I mean, a couple of them were his, a couple of them were mine. So we're blending them.
Blending only took us 4 to 7 years, and we did it.
As we talk about it, because I mean, there was a couple things that he said to me, to the audience about it being high.
Don't jump ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. I kind of felt that was where that was going. She's trying to get ahead of us, people. We're going to slow her down. Okay, so for the very first point, and now she's going to be able to run with it. The very first point that we got away from that was high demand, low need. Explain that to everybody.
It's high need, low demand. So he just flipped that backwards a little bit.
I wrote it wrong then.
No, that's okay. So there is a high need for Stepfamily ministry, and for like what we need resources from the church. We need those things. So it's a really high need, and it's a low demand. So churches aren't really understanding a lot. I don't want to say all, because some, at this summit, that was the beautiful thing about this summit, is that we saw so many people from all over the nation come together that want to bring more awareness to this space. And the people that were the keynote speakers and the leaders of this that wanted to bring the resources to equip us to go back and help local churches and, the current church that you're a part of, if people needed that, to say like, the church community is full of step families, and it actually is a really high need. And you wouldn't think about it unless you're in a step family. You don't think about stuff that you don't know what you don't know. And it is a very high need, and it's just a low demand. So having this stuff was super, super important to us.
Yeah, I can. So when we first started talking about like what type of content, when Christian and I first started this, we started thinking about all the content and stuff like, what do we do to help people? How can we help people that were in the same situation as us? And as we started looking back, after us getting divorces and getting together, we never thought one time to think about reaching out for some type of support. And we had to think, why? Was there a need? There was a massive need, but we didn't feel like there was a demand. And this is what I believe why, and this is kind of what we gathered from this, is that number one, you're leaving a marriage and you're getting into a new relationship. You feel as though I'm leaving what I don't want and I'm getting into what I do want. So I don't need any help with that, right? Mm-hmm. I've already learned of all the bad things that I don't like. So I'm getting into something that I do want. So I don't need any help with that. And then we think to ourselves, like, if we've already done premarital counseling, we've already done marital counseling, we don't need that because that apparently didn't help the first time around. So we don't even understand if there is going to be any issues coming ahead. In our eyes, we're just happy to get away from what we were from. And now I'm just talking about our own personal situation. And I think that involves a lot of you that is the same, is you don't really realize the days to come are going to be unbelievably hard. Mm-hmm. And without having the right type of resources, tools, techniques, all this stuff, we just don't know. So is there a high level of need? There absolutely is, but no demand for it because we just don't know we need it. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. People don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
You just don't, because it's not like step families are walking in the church, because we think we've been married before. We know how to do the marriage thing. We had to leave the person because the person sucked.
Correct.
So then you get into the church community and you're like, okay, so I'm getting Jesus. I'm coming to church. I'm getting Jesus. And I married a person now that I feel, is not going to suck. Right. And we're going to be great. And so it's not like you're walking into the church too saying, hey, I really think that we could have some resources here that really would benefit us. Because we think at that point we have Jesus and we have a new partner. Everything's figured out.
Yep.
And it's not. It's a lot harder. You don't think about all the things that you're going to come in contact with. And then on top of that, a lot of the leadership in churches are nuclear families. So they just think, oh, if we're going to marriage counsel, someone that's getting ready to get in their second marriage, I'm just going to marriage counsel them just like I'd marriage counsel everybody else. Yep. So we don't realize that there is a need unless us people that are within the blended community actually start speaking up and just saying like, hey, we do have to deal with things that nuclear families don't have to deal with. We have to deal with the same things, marriage and, God and life and bills and all of that stuff. But then we have a compounding amount of things on top of that we have to deal with. And it isn't what God designed for us. But if you read through the Bible, the majority of families in the Bible were blended families.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only imagine the stuff that people had to go through. The
Well,
jealousy. I mean, some of it they talk about, some of it they don't.
yeah, well, think about all the titles that we have to carry around, right? Nobody wants to carry around a title when they walk in and say, hey, are you guys a blended family? Are you guys step family? First off, that has such a negative connotation to it. I don't want to be referred to that. And if someone instantly in the church says, oh, you guys are getting married and stuff, oh, you need blended, couple support, you need step family support, I'm like, whoa, slow your roll, man. I'm good.
I would
right?
like it.
But in the beginning, you don't, because you don't want to be branded as something negative. And so,
Yeah.
when we walk in and we're looking, even thinking to ourselves like, hey, there's a class for step families or blended families, to the majority of people are not thinking, oh, I want to go there. It's just like a recovery program, right? We run Celebrate Recovery at our church. People aren't raising their hands saying, oh my gosh, like I struggle with pride, I want to come to your recovery program. No, because if I go there, people are going to think something different about me than what is actually true. And I really believe that's the same thing when it comes to blended families and step families. It kind of carries this overarching negative feel to it, but it's not true. Like, it's not true. Jesus was in a blended family. I mean, we can talk about blended family stuff all day long, but these people are not out just saying, hey, we're in high demand for this right now. Like, we're searching all over the place for support. No, they don't search for support until their second or third marriage is getting ready to fail again. Now they're like, I need to do something about this.
Well, I think some people feel the way that you said, like they don't want to go. Like me personally, I feel like if I walked into a church and I was part of a step family already, I would definitely, if there was a step family class, I would definitely want to be in it. I feel like I would be that way. I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I love that. Now, for people like me, the reason why it's hard to talk about step families is because as soon as you say, like, you tell someone, oh, my son's in the hospital, someone has a lot of empathy for you, especially if they have children, that your child is in the hospital. Then if it came out, it's your stepkid, the psychological, like, empathy and all of that for you changes. And it's still in the world, and even in the secular world where step families are rampant, it's not just in the church community, it's everybody, because so many people get divorced and remarried. And it's like people don't have as much empathy. They actually think in their head like, well, why are you so upset about it? That's not even your kid. And I just think it's very, very heartless, because God calls us to love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves. So how much are you going to love, the children of your spouse? And you don't love stepchildren the same as your biological kids. It's not the same. It's different. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. But you love them because you love your spouse, and it pains you to see your spouse hurting. And of course, it pains you to see a child hurting, but mainly because it's your spouse's kids too. So that's the stigma that I think is in some of the churches, is people don't want to admit. Some people don't want to admit that they're a step family because the view is different from that end. Like, people don't care as much for you to care as much if it's not your own kids.
Sure. I don't disagree with that. I think it depends on where you're at in the whole process of step families, right? If you're dating somebody and you are living together, which is the majority of people, whether we like it or not, it's just the reality of the world. Adults that get divorced end up living together before they get remarried. And now they decide they want to go to church. That's what Christy and I did, right? We decided we were going to go to church. We started going back to church and stuff. I felt like there was a stigma around the whole blended step. Like it's just one less title I wanted hanging over my head at the time. Now, like Christy said, now we're in church, we're involved, we're married, we're moving along. Okay, now I am looking for step family classes that are part of my church. So I think there needs to be things all along the way, is my point. I think there needs to be things for people before they get married. There need to be things for when they are a blended family and they are married, and so on and so forth. So,
but I think that's a good point that you talked about, because that's the difference between someone that came from a step family and someone that didn't.
True.
So like your parents, I mean, your dad isn't biologically your dad, but he basically raised you from an infant.
I don't know any other version.
Right. So I forget that he's not your DNA dad. I mean, I forget. I have to get reminded so much. So your parents have always been together Always. So I think that could be the different stigma, though, from a person that came from still a solidified home
Yeah.
to from a person that my dad was married 5 times. My mom's been married 3 times. So I think it would have been more comfortable for me, since that's what I came from, that brand new walking into a church. If I saw that there was a step family ministry, I would have embraced it.
That's a good point.
Because I came from it.
Yeah.
So I just think that's a good point.
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think you're right. So we know that, and it's a fact, the more we get involved in this, the more that we do realize there's such a high need for this. And anybody you talk to that has a blended family that's in church,
they want it.
They tell you that. It's just the demand is so low. Yeah. I mean, we had a conference. Our first conference was this year, Perfectly Blended Conference at our church, and very, very, very few people from our personal church actually even came. And I know of many, many blended families that go to our church that didn't come. Mm-hmm. And, now we know why. We know why. So there needs to be more awareness around
education.
Yeah, education and awareness. So that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing that we came away from was expectations.
So I like that they talked about this. The theme for them really was unmet expectations. And I loved the fact that they talked about it, because a lot of the times we don't realize when we get mad about something, we just want to talk about why we're mad and how, you hurt my feelings because, in recovery, you are taught to go through the 12 steps and to own your feelings and to say, I felt this way and it's okay that I felt this way. I just need to talk to someone about it, talk to the person that offended me, or, go make amends and things like that. Nope. In a blended family, especially after we've been through recovery, if you've been through with a 12-step program and stuff, you want to go in when you get upset about something, and there's a lot that you can get upset about. Okay. You can get upset that you weren't treating my kids is the same as your own kids, which I feel, but then you may talk to my kid different than your kid, or you may let your kid get away with too much compared to what you let. And then I'm caught in the middle. So then I'm mad at you. I'm mad at my kids if they're not being nice to you. There's so much that you can get upset about. You just want to talk about why you're upset. When really, if you take a step back, usually why you're upset is you had an expectation of how it was going to go. Me personally, I have this viewpoint of how it's going to go, and it doesn't meet my expectations. He's way more flexible than me. So if a plan goes awry, Josh is good on the fly. And I am not. Like, if I have this whole plan in my head, so it's more like it is an expectation, but to me, it's a plan. Like, okay, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. And if somebody isn't happy or someone gets their feelings hurt, I instantly am upset. And then I want to talk about, hey, I'm really upset because you said this in this tone to this person. When really, if we took a step back and you were like, okay, tell me how you viewed this scenario was going to be going, which is expectations. And I'm like, okay, I viewed that it was going to go step, 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 step. And then he could then say, okay, now I have a better understanding of what your expectation was of this specific scenario. And it didn't go that way. And this is what I felt the scenario was going to go like, and it didn't go that way either. So we're both kind of upset. It makes it to where it like diffuses the situation. It doesn't make it so much about feelings. It makes it more like, hey, this is how I envision this going, this picturesque moment. And it didn't meet my bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Unresolved expectations. So the thing that I got from this one, when they were talking about it, I labeled it 1, 2, and 3. There was 3 main points. Unresolved issues, exactly what Christy was just saying, or unresolved issues that we've had in our previous relationship, which we've talked about before, that we're bringing along. So we're automatically assuming things of our new partner because we haven't resolved them. And that list of unresolved issues can go real deep, especially if we start talking about maybe some type of chemical dependency issues, abuse issues. I mean, that can go deep. And then the second thing is inaccurate beliefs, right? Which, we have a different belief system maybe. And I don't necessarily mean spiritual beliefs. I just mean internal beliefs. And then number 3 is unrealistic expectations. So we're being unreal in our expectations. Maybe the way that I raised my kids thus far is very different than the way that Christy did. And I have an unreal expectation, or she has an unreal expectation of each other. Like we're supposed to just cope and adjust. And I think for us, we had a very unrealistic expectations in the beginning when we first got together. Like we each mentioned it to our children that we were going to live together, and that was it. All of a sudden now We're living together. Her and I are sleeping in the same bed together. We are not married. Our kids now have to share bedrooms with kids they've never even met before. So, and we didn't think nothing of it. We thought nothing. We thought like this is going to be great. And that was such an unrealistic expectation that we now put on our children. Right? And now years later, if you ask Christy what her number one biggest regret is, that would be one of your biggest regrets.
I have huge regrets about that.
Yeah.
Like huge. I can just start crying about it just now, just because you can do such damage psychologically to your kids that then, they're going to have to work through as an adult. Just like, my parents screwed me up in some form or fashion, and his parents screwed him up in some form.
Yeah.
Like everybody does.
Yep.
So, but as a parent, you really, as a good parent, I don't think my parents cared, to be honest, but as a good parent, you really try to not screw your kids up as little as possible.
Right.
You really want to do right by your kids. And because of the background that I came from, just chaos all the time with so many people getting thrown in and out of my life, I really wanted to protect them and not screw them up as much as possible. That's why I prayed to God to never give me a girl, because I was petrified that I would screw a girl up. And when the fact that both of us, but I just want to speak for myself, the fact that I disregarded what it would do to them and the feelings that they would have about it, and actually talk to them like, how are you feeling, while they're little? Because now they're teenagers. Like if you try to sit them down now and say, hey, when this happened, when we did this, how were you? Like, can they?
No.
We'll not talk about it. Now, if they're little, like they were.
Remember.
Yeah. They were, well, some do, but they were 9. My 2 were 8 and 6. So at that time, if I would have sat them down and said, hey, how are you doing? Like, how is everything going? How are you feeling? They would have been more apt to talk to me and be open about it and say, mommy, and all of these things. And I really was ignorant to them, especially my oldest, which I've talked about on other podcasts, because he went from being the oldest boy to being the third oldest. So he was the alpha. And then he went to being the third oldest, second oldest boy. No one else's positions really changed. Jordan stayed the oldest and the only girl. And she has little Josh. She has Isaiah. She has a brother from her biological dad. Little Josh stayed the oldest boy. And he already had another little brother from that they had the same mom but different dad. So he was kind of at least used to having like a half sibling. And then Graydon was the youngest. He stayed the baby. And so little Josh was used to not being the youngest.
Right.
He had a brother.
He was always used to being the second oldest.
Yeah. So Garrett, it really was a huge hyper change for him. And I have a lot of guilt about it.
Yeah. And I think that, when that comes to unrealistic expectations, I mean, we think ourselves like, oh man, at the time, do we think that we were doing harm? No, we didn't think at all. We thought it was great. Like, we're in love. We know how great this is going to be for us.
And how great we are together.
How can this not impact our children in a positive way, right?
We're going to church.
That is so unrealistic, though. It's unrealistic. We didn't know any better.
We didn't.
But that's what the whole point of expectations are. I mean, they're unrealistic, and we have unrealistic, like things are going to, so Christy mentioned it early on in this episode where, they say that, it takes a minimum of 2 years before you get out of the horrific stage of blending, right? So
the bumpiest.
Yeah, the bumpiest. I mean, it can be horrific. Okay, let's just be honest. Like a lot of it it's really, really hard. And it typically takes anywhere between 4 and 7 or even more years before things completely smooth out, where you feel like it's not like white knuckling it every single day. And I think for us, it took us, what did we talk about, 5?
Mm-hmm.
Took us
I would have said 5.
Yeah, about 5 years, probably 5 years in before we were out of the white knuckle zone where, there was constant like, oh my goodness, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle this? So we need to understand that we have to be willing to set our expectations correct. And I've watched people where they're like, oh man, we've been married for a year now or a year and a half now. And why aren't things great? And it's like, well, things are not going to be great. This is your time of prepping to make things great in the 4 to 7. So setting our expectations is super important in blended families.
But this takes it back to point number 1, that it is a high need, low demand, because we started going to church before we got married, had moved in together and all this stuff. If churches are equipping and being more readily available and talking more about blended families and the fact that second and third marriages have a higher divorce rate than first marriages, especially if there was kids involved, we could start saving a lot more marriages. Not just first marriages, but we could start saving these second marriages that people are getting together.
Yeah.
Because again, I came from a blended family, a massive blended family, and I still didn't see these things. So that's why it is such a high need, because you want to protect. Now, okay, now we're going to get married. We don't want to get divorced again. And people don't think about what they don't think about. So it has to be readily available and talked about in something that is just second nature,
It needs to be beat over the head.
especially in the church communities.
Yeah, it does.
Like, this is resources that you need. And if you're a step family or if you're getting ready to blend, you need to know these things. You need to think about these things. You need to include your kids in these things.
Yes. Yeah, because we need to have awareness to these things, because we're completely unaware.
Yes.
That's why we like talking about this expectation thing is such a big deal. It's such a big deal because your expectations are all over the place, all over the place, because all you care about is finding a better mate than you had before. And that's the truth. I mean, it's the truth. So expectations, that was a huge one for us. Number three, lies we tell ourselves.
And this is my favorite one.
This is Christy's favorite. All these lies.
Because everyone in the room, when they started going over this, the couple in the front, they started reading these. The whole room, you can hear laughter, chuckling, like, like, oh, like all these noises. It was the loudest in the room when they started reading these, because everyone in the room was part of a blended family, and everyone pretty much could relate to at least one of these. So they labeled it as the unrealistic myth. I labeled it as the lies that we tell ourselves, we're going to get together. So the step parent will embrace stepchild with the same love as the biological parent. No. The stepchild will desire to quickly establish an emotional bond with the step parent.
No. Quickly establish.
No.
My son still hasn't told Christy that he loves her, even though she knows he does. And that is 11 years it's been.
Yeah, and he went from 9 to now he's going to be 20 next month.
Yeah. So we saw how quick that is.
Yeah. And then the instant love / family. So okay, we're married. And they talked about a lot of good, so good things that we need to take and carry out to our community of people, because it's so true. They made a good point that the kids are usually about a year behind the adults.
Yeah.
So it's we get married, and it's after you get married, something, even in your first marriage, okay? When you get married, you can be living together or whatever, dating. You get married, something changes in your brain. And I think God has designed it that way, because God, wants us to get married. So it's we're going through all this stuff, and somewhere deep inside, we think and we believe we get married, everything's going to be great. Okay, we're married now.
Yeah.
Everything's great.
Leave it to Beavers.
My conviction's going to go away. We're doing the right thing. Rainbows and unicorns all day. And what we don't think about is the kids have their own, and that's not thought about. The kids have their own stuff that they're dealing with.
They have to adjust.
And they did make a good point, and I have said this in many of our podcasts. Kids always, no matter what age they are, always hold on to a little tiny thread or dream or fantasy that their bio parents will get back together.
Yeah, hope. They talked about that too.
And they talked about it. And I thought that was a really good point, because after you get married, it more solidifies to the kids that their bio parents will never get back together. And so they want to be happy for you, because they want to be happy for their mom. My kids want to be happy for me. I'm their mom. Kids want to be happy for me. But then they're also processing their own stuff. Just the other day, we were talking about our marriage, and my youngest, Graydon, was I just do you remember this? Do you remember this? And he's yeah, I never really understood what was happening.
At our wedding.
And he didn't. And I didn't think about that.
No.
Didn't think about it at all. So now they're just okay, now he's my dad, or he's my stepdad, and Ron Deal talked about that too, about you need to talk to your kids about what you're going to call each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to be like, oh, the lies we tell ourselves, we're going to get married now, and now he's your dad 2.0. You know, like it's not, the kids don't feel that way. So you would need to have realistic expectations
Yeah.
and talk through things before you get married.
Yeah, the instant love thing really,
Yeah.
really connected well with me when it comes to this myth, because one of the pastors was talking about, like, you know, he was telling his kids, you better call her mom. Like, you call her mom. Like, that's the name you call her, you know, and it just caused a lot of distension. And then when the stepmom and the kids got together, they came up with a name that was fitting, when they never even alerted the bio dad of this. And then in front of him, the kids called her this, and he like jerked this kid out of its seat and took him to the side and said, you do not talk to her like that. And the stepmom had to come over and be like, whoa, no, it's cool. Like, we talked about it. Like, this is good. And he was like, you know, so we instantly assume, like, right, with these myths.
Both
like,
of those people were doctors too.
Yeah, they were doctors, yeah, PhDs as well. And it's funny because we just instantly think that's love. You know, embrace stepchildren with same love as parents. I mean, this is like the most uncomfortable expectation. Like, it's super weird. Like, when I do things, I'm like, oh man, she automatically thinks right now that I'm favoring my kid. Like, she just thinks it. Like, even though I feel like I'm intentionally, purposely unfavoring my child in this moment, I know in the back of her mind, she thinks that I'm favoring my kid over her kid. See? And that's what I'm saying, right? So, and that usually is the feeling in it. And so, you know, we have this weird myth, you know, that we're supposed to just embrace each other's children at the highest degree and love everybody's kids the same. And that is just, that's sabotage at the highest level. That's a myth that's just not, it's not true.
Yeah.
You know, we'll desire to quickly establish emotional bond with the step parent. I mean, kids can go through the whole relationship and always feel like they're violating their bio parent the whole time while they're in your family. You know, like my son, I think, always struggled with, and probably still struggles with to a certain degree. He's not supposed to like Christy more than he's supposed to like his mom. And if he likes Christy at all, he automatically is liking her more than he likes his mom. And that is a betrayal thing. And whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. That's the way that these children feel. That's the way they feel. They're pickled in the middle. And that's an unfortunate thing. And so these are myths, though. And, you know, and these, even though these are unrealistic expectations, they're still these lies that we tell ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And as you actually believe that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, like
you grow to expect it.
Yeah, I got with you and I'm just like, oh, I need to make sure these kids know that I'm here to support them and love them and all this stuff. And they didn't want that because their mom, mom didn't want that. But then your true colors do come out when it's not even a question. When you feel like your spouse is siding with their child over your child, it's not even a question. I go to mine, and it's just a natural tendency in a blended family that it does. I mean, there's so much stuff in here. We could do other podcasts on these things because it talks about tons of things in here about how step families reveal weaknesses. They talk about how all people, have their own stuff. So you need to own your bad. But if you really have things that you need to work on, that you make sure that you're doing so, because step family, being in that dynamic, you can live in this bubble. I think a lie that we tell ourselves too is this is our home. So when you're here, this is how we're going to function in this. And you really don't grasp the fact that one call from the ex will and can disrupt your whole life. So no matter how much you want to accept that or not, if it's not your day to pick up the kids, or if it's not your day to do something and you have plans and the ex calls and says, I'm not picking them up, I can't pick them up.
Your plans are changed.
What are you going to do? Not pick up your kids? You can't make them go pick up the kids. And then you have your spouse being like, but we had plans.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm sick of you.
She always does this.
Yeah, letting her like ruin our plans and do that. And it's just
you'll never stick up for yourself.
What am I like? I just know that my kids need to get picked up.
Yeah.
So it's those are things that you don't think about either, and lies that you can tell yourself, like, no, once we get together, it's us and her days are her days and our days are our days, which isn't true. It doesn't.
It's changed so many times for us.
Yeah. But it never 100%. Even if it happens one or two times, you get frustrated with it. you know,
It is.
because you think they're doing it on purpose, which sometimes maybe they are, sometimes they're not.
Most likely they are some of the times doing it intentionally. All right, number 4. The fourth thing we walked away with is different isn't wrong.
Yes, I love the points that he brought up for this because it's these simple things that people talk about. Josh and I, that is something that I wish we would have learned from the beginning, is he parented differently, I parented differently, but just because it was different didn't mean he was wrong, and just because mine was different didn't mean mine was wrong. And part of my problem coming into the relationship was I was still actively drinking. So a lot of people, if you've listened to our other podcast, you guys know that Josh was a year and a half sober, which he made the 101 mistake in recovery and started dating a person that was full in their addiction.
I thought I could fix her.
Yeah. So I'm stubborn now. I mean, let alone when I was like really bad.
Right.
So now I don't remember where I was going with that.
I don't know either, but all we know is that different is not wrong. Different isn't wrong. And that's the thing is that we have a hard time with, especially if you have older children. You are very stuck in your ways, right? So, and in your previous relationship, maybe you've done things a very specific way. Maybe you had certain types of chores you did at home. Maybe your children have very certain specific things that they did in the previous relationship. And now you're coming into the new, maybe this family's a little more chaotic. Maybe the kids are a little more outgoing. Maybe your children, come home and they do their homework first and then play later. Well, I don't know. You said you didn't know. You didn't know.
I'm not talking for the rest of the show.
You said you didn't know what you were going to say.
I found them.
Well, you go ahead and talk about them.
No, you talk about your points.
I'm kidding. My point is that, we have all of these things that we get stuck in our own way. And when you get into another marriage, you are so stuck and saying to yourselves, like, I don't want the same thing to repeat. So I'm going to dig in a little bit harder this time and stick with the things that I want, the things that I desire. And what ends up doing is you end up blocking out any suggestion that can come in, and it creates all this, makes everything wrong. Everything different, it becomes wrong. And all that does is create deeper tensions within the family.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is I was still in my addiction. And one of their points in this massive list of pamphlet is if a parent comes in, both parents come into the relationship with their own stuff already. So I was actively in my addiction. So I was broken and I wasn't able to own my bad yet in that area of my life. So when him and I got together, I was very insecure. So everything, he had already been through recovery. He already had like this great relationship with his kids. He already had his crap together, it seemed like, for me. And so everything that he was doing with his kids, I perceived as wrong because it was a threat to me. Because I felt like he was already so far ahead and he was already such a better parent than me because I was already so broke. I was still so broken. And I wasn't confident in my own parenting abilities or the decisions that I had made for my kids because I was insecure. So you have to make sure that you work through those things when you get together and talk about them. So two of the points that he brought up about different is not wrong is you can get in a blended family, and some people, they wake up for their kids and they make them pancakes and bacon and eggs. And some families, it's breakfast, sitting out in front of the TV, eating breakfast. Yeah. Eating cereal together. And that could turn into a major fight in a relationship. Like, I make my kids, my bacon and eggs. And it's like, I don't want to spend money on bacon, eggs, and waffles every day for 4 kids. Okay. That would be too much. And then the other thing is when they do homework. So he might say, my kids come home, they go play because I know that they will get their homework done. I've never had an issue with them not turning in their homework. So I give them the freedom and the responsibility to make their own decisions because they can handle it. Where someone like me would be like, I don't care. Like, they need to come home and they need to do their homework before they allowed to play. It's like, business before pleasure. That's it. You come home, you get it done, and then but that's how I am as a person. Like, I cannot give myself the leeway to sit down and relax if there's this, and this to be done. Like, you need to get it done first.
I think this is where kind of the whole nacho parenting thing comes to be a broken system, because if you're in a family and your kids come home, right? Let's say all 4 kids come home, 2 of hers, 2 of mine. They all come home from school, and then they're like, Well, my kids do their homework and I don't have to force them to do it, and they'll do it later and I don't have to worry about it. And Christy's like, no, my kids are doing their homework now. What type of divide do you think that puts between the children? That's where,
Right.
like, sitting down and saying, okay, we need to come up with something that works for both of us and works for our family. It's kind of whole creating new traditions kind of concept. It's like, it's kind of going through this and saying, okay, we now need to recreate this, because in a nuclear family, you don't sit and say, two of the kids, get to do their homework whenever they want, and then two of the other kids have to do it right when they get home. Like, that would never, it just wouldn't happen, right? Because now all of a sudden you're like, that's your favorite, that's your favorite, and that would just never happen. So, we have to understand, like, we have to have flexibility in our blended family. We have to have, the understanding that different is not necessarily wrong. It doesn't have to be wrong. And I think it's real easy to be emotionally thinking that you're hurting your children by
Yeah.
making them change things too.
Yeah.
Listen, you've already changed it. It's
Yeah.
already been changed. The consistency and everything being on somewhat of an equal understanding level. Now, I understand everything's not going to be equal for every kid. I get all that.
Right.
Like, I'm not even going there with that. But I think when it comes to big issues, we have to understand that different isn't wrong. Like, we have to come to a common ground on things to make sure that our family is cohesive. The whole chore thing, making chores equal for everybody in the sense that they does it by age, but making sure that it's not unfair where, like, Christy's kids were at our home almost all of the time where my kids weren't. It'd be unfair to tell her boys that they had to do chores every single day. And when my kids came home, they had to do it, 2 times a week. And we can get into the whole, like, well, my kids have to do chores at their mom's house. No, I don't know what my kids do at their mom's house, right? And their mom's house isn't my concern. Our house is our concern. So I think we have to be very careful that we change this whole, different isn't wrong thing and try and bend it into the way that makes us feel most comfortable.
And I do think it's important for you as a couple. I mean, this was hit home by everyone at the conference, because everyone that's in a blended family, especially the Christian community, understands your marriage. It starts with your marriage. The key is your marriage. Your family is going to be as weak or as strong as what your marital bond is. And I think it is important to try to make it, Josh and I did when it came to this, I think we did a good job, try to make it as fair as possible. So, like, if he had a certain way to do this and I had a certain way to do this, if we more leaned towards, okay, we're transitioning to the way that he did it, the next time something small like this comes up, like the homework or the play, like, okay, let's try to, if it does, because it really doesn't matter. Neither one matters. It's not like life or death of the family structure and everything else. You do need to make sure that it doesn't change everything up, like all the basic everyday little habitual things that you did as a family, a mini family, all lean towards the one spouse's family. You need to try to make it to where it blends. You do some of the things that my mini family did when we came together, and we do some of the things that their mini family did before they came together, because the mini families stay mini families within the family. So you need to try to blend it. And that's the whole point of the word blend.
Yeah. Yeah, so the word for this conference was prepare, right?
Yeah.
So they have a theme
Thank
each
you,
and it was on prepare. And this is something that Christy and I are really going to lean into when it comes to blended families is premarital or pre-blending, is something that we really want to lean into, because the ultimate best way to help prevent some of the issues is to be well equipped before they happen.
Yeah.
And so, understanding how important it is to prepare, all of these things that we've talked about, plus all of these other things that are on here, are things that we can educate ourselves, find tools, techniques, resources available that can help give you a hand up. Is it going to fix everything? No, absolutely will not, because ultimately it's going to take hard work. But Christy said it, and this is something that we are true believers in. At the very, very foundation, other than focusing your lives on Christ, the next thing is focusing yourselves on your marriage. If you have a strong marriage, you'll want to work through these things. You'll desire to work through these things that are super hard to work on. You'll stop thinking that you're a silo and that your way is the way and that you need to look out for you. And when you really work hard on creating a solid foundation in your marriage, it makes it much easier to work on these things. And that is something that we discovered in the last 11 years of our own relationship and family, is that has been a major source of fruit that's come in our own personal family. is working on our own marriage. So,
Yeah.
so prepare. And I think I want to leave with that at the end is just prepare. If you want to look up these people, like I said, their website is instepministries.com. I'll leave a link down in that. So
It was so cute though, because when they got up to start talking, she was like, our ministry is called Blended and Blessed.
Blended and Blessed, which
Blended
is
and
somebody
Blessed.
else's.
And they're talking, and I'm like, I looked at Josh. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I didn't know they
They
founded
were
that.
the original founders of Blended and Blessed. And him and I were both like, whoa. And then he waited so patiently, very similar to Josh and I. He waited so patiently for her to get done talking. And as soon as she got done, he was like, yes, dear. And our ministry is called Instep Ministries. And then he went to talk and she's like, isn't that what I said? And he's like, no. And but it was so cute watching them be together.
It was sweet.
They were just a very, very sweet couple.
They were very complimentary of each other.
Jeff and Judy.
They're Jeff and Judy. JJ.
Mm.
So nonetheless, it was a fantastic time. We look forward to really sharing a bunch more that we've gotten over the next few weeks. Next week, we have a super special episode. So 7:00 next Tuesday, you're going to want to stay tuned for that. We have something a little outside of the box that we're going to do next week. So
it was Josh's idea, of course. Anything outside of the box is Josh's idea.
I like the color outside the lines.
In the box is my idea. Yeah. Outside of the box, it's his idea.
Yeah, it's just real me.
Which I love. I love it.
Yeah. We complement each other.
We do.
So thank you so much for being here. We want to also let you know that we have a private Christian Couples of Blended Families Facebook group. I'll make sure to leave a link down there too. Join it. It's private. You can share. You can ask. And, it's just a place to be able to go in and just, hopefully gain some knowledge and share some experience and help each other along the way. We need more of it.
Or if you want us to come to your church to do a perfectly blended event.
Yeah, a 2-hour event. We can do 2 hours of event. We can share on all the experiences that we've had. The event that we did was a full day, but, we have an opportunity to do 2 hours, and we would love to do that. So.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. If you've made it this far and you haven't shared us yet, please hit the share button. We do appreciate it, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 7.
Bye.